Welcome aboard Just Jets with your captain, Matt O'Leary. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary, back with episode number 54 of Just Jets. Excited to talk some New York Jets football with you. And we have a lot to get into today. We're going to be talking about a Sam Darnold report that came out. We're going to be talking about a potential meeting with Najee Harris and your voicemails as well. But before we get started today, I wanted to give you a word from our sponsor, Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with my promo code JETS20 over at manscaped.com. You can pick yourself up something like the Lawnmower 3.0, the Perfect Package Kit, the Weed Whacker, or one of my other favorites. I got it right here, the Manscaped Refined Cologne. It smells tremendous. I use it just about every day. I keep it right next to me here at my desk, so if I'm ever getting a little funky while I'm doing a video, just spritz a little bit on and you're right back in business. But absolutely a trusted company by over 2 million men worldwide, and it's understandably, so because they give you really great products. So 20% off, free shipping, promo code JETS20. Buy yourself something nice over at manscaped.com. So let's jump right into episode 54. There was a report from Brandon Tierney, who is on the radio for CBS Sports. He says that there's some internal discussion going on with Sam Darnold, and the Jets are leaning towards moving on from Sam Darnold. And I know what you're probably going to think. You're going to say, well, that's what Matt has been talking about for a while now, in just that he would like the Jets to go either Deshaun Watson or draft a quarterback at 2. So he's probably going to talk about how that this is, obvious and this is a right decision. Well, hold on. I don't believe this report. And it's not to say anything negative about Brandon Tierney, but let's just think for a second. Would BT be the guy who would break that the Jets are moving on from Sam Darnold? Do you truly believe that? I don't. And it's nothing against Brandon Tierney. It's just I don't think they have made that decision yet. And I don't think the public is going to know that decision until either A, Sam Darnold is traded before the draft, B, Sam Darnold is traded at the draft, the Jets trade out of 2, or the Jets draft Zach Wilson or Justin Fields at 2. I think we're going to have to wait at least a few more weeks before we know our answer. And the answer will be, hey, the Jets traded Sam Darnold. Guess they were moving on from him. Or it'll come on draft day when they either take a quarterback at 2 or don't. I don't think we're going to know from a February report of a national radio guy. Like, I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, Brandon Tierney. You may be the most logical guy and have the most, the sources on the scene. I get it. I personally am not believing it right now, though. I can't. I don't think they know one way or the other, and I don't think they're going to let it get out right yet. Maybe internally they have an idea which way they're leaning, and maybe they are leaning towards moving on from him. And I could say, okay, that would make sense. But the fact that it's out there, I don't think they would let it get out there yet. And I don't think a final decision's been made, and I don't think we're going to know for the foreseeable future. So I'm not buying it. I don't think you should yet either. As I said, this is going to be a long process. We're still a few weeks away from a free agency beginning. We might not know by the start of free agency, which I believe is March 17th this year. So it's going to be a bit of a process. It's February, what? I'm recording now on the Sunday before, the 21st. It's dropping on the 22nd. Like, it's going to be a few more weeks, probably at minimum, before we know. And I don't think we're going to get the breaking news from a guy like BT. I don't buy it. I don't. So I'm going to be patient, and that's what I think you should be too. I think a lot of people have been very reactionary with Sam Darnold in this, just the offseason, looking at what the Jets are going to do this offseason. And then also looking at Justin Fields and Zach Wilson, very reactionary. Apparently Fields is not draftable now because some NFL scouts have said that they worry about him scanning the field and making reads. Like, come on, this is the stupid stuff that continues to get stirred up. Last week it was the Zach Wilson and not being voted a captain. Like, it's just the nonsense that we have to go through in the pre-draft process is just truly remarkable. People are looking for every excuse not to draft players or not to move on from players. You could spin just about any storyline you want into whichever narrative you are trying to push. So just be wary of that right now. That is my words of advice, is that at this time of year, more often than not, people are trying to push their own narratives. Believe it when you see it. I am not believing it yet with Sam Darnold. We'll see what happens. I would prefer if they traded him, but with that being said, I don't think the public knows that decision yet. I don't buy it for a second. The second story I would like to get to in the open here is a potential meeting with Najee Harris. And Ali over at Loyal NY Jet Fans talked about this story and broke this story, friend of the show. By the way, quick sidebar, and then we'll get into this story here. If you're a part of Jets community, which I imagine you know who Ali is, if you're watching me, you watch Jets Talk 24/7, you know a lot of these guys. If you're coming at Ali, man, for some of the stuff that he posted that was slid into his DMs and said, just bottom of the barrel human being. Like that is just awful, despicable things. And it's frustrating because I never had anything said to me that was that horrendous to that level. And I don't want to repeat what was said to him because it was disgusting to read. But just as someone who makes content, like I empathize with him because you see it. 90 to 95% of the interactions with people in DMs or messages or just online is fine. And even if you have that, disagreement with someone, like let's say, for instance, someone wants to trade Sam Darnold versus someone who wants to keep Sam Darnold, more often than not, there's still a level of respect there. But that 2, 3, 5%, whatever it is, the messages that you get makes you not want to do this stuff anymore. So I feel for Ali. And he's a good guy, so just wanted to give him some love over there. And it was nice to see the reaction when he posted the messages and all the support that was sent his way because he's a good kid, and he works really hard at what he does, and he's really good at what he does. And he had this report, which we're going to get into now, about the Jets meeting with Najee Harris. And I'll say this about the report. Just because they meet with a player doesn't mean that they're going to draft said player. They're going to do their due diligence on the quarterbacks. They're going to do their due diligence on some of the big name guys in round one. This has kind of been my stance on this for a while now, but I'm going to stick with it. I would be really, really surprised if Joe Douglas drafts a running back either in the back half of the first round or at pick 34 in the second round. I think maybe the only way you could see a running back going semi-early for this Jets team is if they trade Sam Darnold for a late first or early second, and you have, let's call it 4 picks in the first 2 rounds, wherever they fall. Then, and maybe only then, one of those first 4 picks would be a running back. But just based off everything we know with how Joe Douglas operates and how he looks at building rosters and the success that the San Francisco 49ers have had with these no-name running backs coming in, I would be very, very surprised if they gave a premium draft asset to that position. I think you are more likely going to see a veteran running back come in free agency to pair with the 2 younger guys in Ty Johnson and LaMichael Pirine, or you'll see a mid to late round back, either round 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there to go with that group. And I would say that route is probably less likely because they just drafted a running back in the, was it 3rd or 4th round with Pirine last year? I can't remember. I think it was the 4th. And you have Johnson, who's just a couple of years in this league, getting someone like Marlon Mack, Jamal Williams, Gus Edwards, and pairing them with with those 2 guys, I think seems to make the most sense. And I like Harris as a player a lot. I think Najee Harris is going to be a very good player in this league. I think Travis Etienne is going to be a very big player in this league. But I don't think the Jets have the luxury of using one of those early round assets on a running back with the amount of needs this team still has. And I think they could still get pretty good value on guys, or getting a bunch out of, Ty Johnson, or getting more out of LaMichael Pirine, and getting the most out of a Gus Edwards or someone like that in free agency. So I would be surprised. I wasn't necessarily surprised that it came out that they met with Harris. They're going to do their due diligence, and I have no issue with them talking to these players and seeing what these players are all about and stuff like that. But I would, again, don't think it's very likely the Jets are going to take a player like Harris or Etienne at the back half of the first round or into the second round. But that's it for the opening monologue. Let's get into your voicemails. Now, before we get started, I did get some more voicemails that I'm not going to be able to play. And part of it is the audio quality wasn't good. So if you're calling on a phone that drops out often and the recording quality is garbage, for a lack of a better term, on the voicemail, I'm not going to play it because it's not going to sound good. And I don't want any cursing. If we could avoid cursing, because I sometimes have edited them out in the past, it's a little bit of an extra step for me. And there was a couple in there with some foul language that I wasn't going to play or didn't want to play. But overall, not as many voicemails this week, but just wanted to put that PSA out there if you're considering calling in. So first one's Willie in Massachusetts, who wants to talk about the quarterback play.
Hey, Matty Ice, Willie from Massachusetts.
What up?
Riddle me this. We all avoid the quarterback conversation. I'm in Massachusetts. Can we get a hold of Bill Belichick and Bob Kraft and have his intake on it? Guys, it's like the 80s. You need a point guard in basketball, and you need a quarterback that can manage the complete game. Not only scoring, but controlling the clock. Let's bring somebody in that can do those two things. I don't need 5,000 yards. I don't need turnovers. I need consistent quarterback play. Consistent. I mean, just put anybody, a top 15 quarterback last year, you pick them and play back the games and see, and they'd be 9-7. It's that simple, 10-6, maybe the playoffs. I mean, that's where we need to go, guys. Go Jets. Say it with me. Go Jets, and Joe we trust.
I do trust Joe Douglas a lot, and I am excited that he's the one who's making this decision. I don't think Bill Belichick or Robert Kraft is going to help a division rival, but I like the thought process there. And Willie's right in a sense. Like, this team is a lot better. I think let's take Deshaun Watson. I think, what did I say last week or the week before that? This team's probably a 7-win team with Deshaun Watson playing quarterback and the rest of the roster as is. Like, I get what Will is saying here. I do. You need a quarterback who's going to be able to be a top half of the league quarterback for sure and not turn the ball over. And right now, Sam Darnold has turned the ball over a lot early on in his career. Is that fixable? Is it risky to bet on him fixing it? I would say yes. The biggest thing for me is getting someone who day in, day out, no matter who you're going up against, you could say, okay, I feel confident in him playing quarterback on the field. Sam Darnold wasn't that last year. When the Jets had the ball, you were nervous. You were waiting for that shoe to drop for that turnover mistake. That's not a good way to play football. With Deshaun Watson, you wouldn't have that. With, like you said, and pick a top 10 quarterback in this league, you're not going to have that same thing. When you get to the back half of that in the late teens to early 20s and beyond into just the bad quarterbacks, you start to have that stuff creep in. But I agree, you don't necessarily need someone who's going to throw for 5,000 yards, but if you can give me someone who throws consistently 4,000 yards, 25 plus touchdowns, doesn't turn the ball over, like less than we'll say 9 interceptions, and has a yards per attempt upwards of 7.5, pushing 8, and someone who has a high quarterback rating, and is throwing for 250 plus, even more than that yards per game, then you probably have a good chance to win week in and week out. But with the quarterback play the Jets got last year, they didn't, and that's part of the reason why. It's not the only reason why, but it is definitely part of the reason why they were a 2-14 team. Next up, Jeff in Cali. Thank you, Willie, for checking in. And we got some NFL draft talk from Jeff here.
Hey, Matt. Jeff from Cali. Just wanted to talk some unique draft strategies that Joe Douglas could have, or, I don't know, more so, brainstorming and trying to think outside the box a little bit. So here's what I'm thinking. There's a big thing in the NFL being overconfident in your draft evaluation. You never want to be overconfident in your evaluation. That's how you end up with picks like Cleveland Ferrell at number 4 to the Oakland Raiders and Daniel Jones at number 6.
Good example.
Those two GMs were overconfident in their evaluation and paid the price for it. So here's my train of thought. say Joe Douglas has Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, and Justin Fields all graded around pretty equally. Why don't you try to recoup capital and move down the board and pick yourself up a Trey Lance, who maybe you have graded very similarly to Zach Wilson, although say you do have Wilson graded a little bit higher. So here's a scenario that they could potentially I'm potentially thinking about. So
Okay.
what if you move down twice? There's two teams that may be wanting to move up for a quarterback. That's the Atlanta Falcons at number 4 and the Carolina Panthers at number 8. So imagine you trade down with the Atlanta Falcons at 4, and you get a second-round pick this year and a first-round pick next year. And just out of ease, you do the same thing with the Carolina Panthers. So you get a second-round pick this year and a first-round pick next year. Now you're looking at 4 firsts for the future. Trey Lance, who has a similar ceiling to Zach Wilson. You get 3 second-round picks this year. You still keep your first-round pick at 23, and you get 2/3, and say you get even another second round. So you're looking at 4 second-rounders. You get 1 for Darnold. That would be an unreal amount of draft capital. And if you have those guys graded similarly enough to where you think you can pull something like that off, I would be pretty ecstatic with it. So tell me what you think about that scenario. Thanks, Matt. Go Jets.
It's definitely an interesting train of thought. I like the outside the box thoughts, and you spelled it out really well. It's a very risky play though, because you're not the only team moving around. For instance, what if a team like Denver wants to move up, or San Francisco wants to move up after you move back to 8? Like, there's so many moving parts, and it really depends. I guess it depends on how you feel the board is going to break. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I would rather, if Trey Lance is the highest graded quarterback that the Jets have, I'd rather take that player at 2 and just know that you got your guy in that spot. And I don't think that's overdrafting. Now, if Mac Jones is your guy, and I would not like that if Mac Jones is Joe Douglas's guy as the number 2 quarterback in this class, that's a completely different conversation we need to be having about Joe Douglas's evaluations. But let's play the game for a second there. Then maybe I'm doing your scenario that you laid out and moving back a couple of times. But any of these big 4, I don't know if I would be willing to do that. It's so risky. It is at that point. But in a perfect world, if you move back twice and that does work out and you still get that guy, then it's a home run play. It's a risky play. I don't know if I would have the guts to do it, but it's an interesting thought process, Jeff. And I like the idea of moving around on the board. And Joe Douglas in year 1 of the draft showed that he's willing to do that. So thank you for the question. Let's get to Caden in New York. He's got a Darnold trade proposal.
Hey, Matt, this is Caden from New York. I just had a Sam Darnold trade proposal and I just thought I'd call in and see what your thoughts were.
Sure.
So it's kind of 2 ideas. So Sam Darnold goes to Carolina in both instances. The first one is we trade Sam Darnold to Carolina for their 3rd-round pick this year and cornerback Dante Jackson. I think he's going into the final year of his deal. He's young and a pretty decent corner. So I was thinking that we could get a 3rd and then a starting caliber corner, and the cornerback issue should be solved then for a while. Or we trade Sam Darnold and maybe like a 4th-round pick in exchange for Brian Burns, who I really wish we could have drafted in 2019.
I liked him a lot.
He can fit in the 4-3 defense that Robert Saleh runs as someone that comes off the edge, and he's just fast, he'll fly around, and he'll get you sacks. So I just thought I'd call in with that trade proposal. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, really appreciate that. I like the thought process here. If you're taking a little bit of a lesser draft asset, like the 3rd rounder, compared to maybe taking a 2nd or a late 1st, I don't think you're getting a late 1st, but different conversation, and getting a player along with it. Brian Burns, I think, is a very, very intriguing player there. And I like the idea of trading for a corner, too. So if you're telling me draft pick and impact starter, or a starter that's going to be a good player, on a position of need, I could definitely get behind that. And it's premium positions. As you said, edge, huge need for this Jets team, premium position. Corner, huge need for this Jets team, premium position. So I'm for it. I really like this idea, Caden. Would it suck to see him go to the Panthers? Yes, because I think that seeing him with Robbie Anderson and Matt Rule would kill me a little bit inside. I've said that before. But if that's the kind of return I can get, then I'm probably biting the bullet there and betting that LaFleur, Saleh, and that staff can get the most out of Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, or whatever you decide to do with the number 2 pick, or if you're trading for Deshaun Watson. Whatever it is, I think you could potentially make it work. And Caden, you bring up a really good point, or an interesting point, in that it doesn't have to be just draft assets. You can have a player involved as well. I think you're more likely to get just draft assets back, but there are scenarios in which it could make sense that maybe take a little bit of lesser draft capital to get a starting caliber player to plug in. So I like that thought process. Caden, thank you for checking in with us. We'll go to Ben in New Jersey up next. He's got some thoughts on free agency and some under-the-radar guys to look at maybe.
What's up, Matt? It's Ben from Jersey. So I think right now, I feel like I don't know if they'd be guaranteed, but I feel like 2 guys who are most likely going to be signed by the Jets are going to be guard Joe Thuney and wide receiver Curtis Samuel.
That's fair.
So I'm here to give probably 5 more under the radar guys that could be Jets in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So the first guy is the edge from San Francisco, Kerry Hyder. So I think he had like 8 sacks or something like that when Bosa and Armstead and Dee Ford were out with injuries. And I feel like he'll benefit really well in the Saleh system again. And if he doesn't cost a lot of money, I feel like we should definitely go after him. The second guy is safety Keanu Neal from the Atlanta Falcons. So Neal was a Pro Bowler in 2017, but then ACL and Achilles injuries really messed up his career a little bit. He got back on track last year, and with the Falcons in cap hell, I don't think they'll bring him back. If we get him for like $5-6 million a year, I think that would be a really good signing, considering he also played with Marcus May, and it would allow us to use some 3 safety sets with Neal, May, and Ashton Davis. The third guy I think we should sign, fullback Kyle Juszczyk from the Niners. Even though he's a fullback, he had 6 touchdowns last year for San Francisco. He can be used as a running back, tight end. He's an amazing blocker. He's just an all-around guy who can be used in any way. So I think he'd be another shrewd signing by Joe Douglas. The fourth guy, it's not really a low-key signing, but Richard Sherman obviously from the Niners. Sherman loves Saleh. I think Sherman would come to New York to spend his final 2 years because of his love for Robert Saleh.
I agree with that.
And I feel like he'd be really good to mentor the young guys, such as Bless Austin, Bryce Hall, maybe a rookie cornerback that we draft, even like Javelin Guidry. I think he would be a great mentor. The last guy, I'm going to sign cornerback Devondre Campbell from the Arizona Cardinals. He wasn't the greatest last year, but but I'm signing him because I feel like we need depth at linebacker, and Campbell performed best in Atlanta with Jeff Ulbrich as the linebacker coach. I'm not saying he could be a Pro Bowler by any means, but I feel like he could definitely start for us, and having Ulbrich as a coach again can help him reach his full potential. So those are just 5 guys I think we could sign and should sign if we get Joe Thuney and Curtis Samuel. Let me know what you think about these guys, and as always, go Jets.
I really like the thought process here with this one. They all seem to make sense. They're all fits. He gave good reasoning for it. And as fun as it is in free agency to go full Madden mode and say, I want Allen Robinson, I want Joe Thuney, I want Chris Carson, and just go down the line and grab every big name guy, it doesn't always work like that. And you need to fill out your roster. And I think we're going to see some 49ers or former 49ers make their way over to this Jets team on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively, because your offensive coordinator was, the pass game coordinator there for a really, really long time in San Francisco, or just along with the ride in Kyle Shanahan. My favorite of the bunch that you mentioned, I really like the idea of Richard Sherman. I agree. And normally I'm not someone who wants to sign a corner on the wrong side of 30, but for a 1 or a 2 year deal at a relatively cheap cap hit, and to be that mentor to Bryce Hall, Bless Austin there, and maybe another guy that you draft this year, or a younger guy you're bringing in free agency as well, I think that makes a ton of sense. And the linebacker too. Like, this team needs help at linebacker behind Mosley. Like, you hope, like, I'm just hoping Mosley's like 75% the player he once was. Because after that, like, their depth at linebacker isn't great. Maybe bring Neville Hewitt back. I guess that could be okay. But I really, I'm not a Blake Cashman guy. He can't stay healthy. He can't stay on the field. So maybe moving on there and just using that and bringing in a depth guy there and a potential edge. The edge makes sense too. He had, I looked it up while you were talking, 8.5 sacks last year. So I like that. I think that's all intriguing routes that I could absolutely see the Jets doing. So I think your take was pretty realistic here. Last one's from Brandon in Georgia. He's got a thought about potentially drafting a quarterback outside of round 1.
What's up, Matt? Brandon from Georgia. Driving home from the gym, I was just thinking about the Alex Smith situation when, let's be real, he looked like a bust.
In San Fran.
And then they ended up taking a quarterback in the second round. So would you think the Jets would do that? Anyway, go Jets. See ya.
Okay, so we're talking about in 2005, Alex Smith was a first-round pick. Was he the first overall pick in 2005? He might have been. See if I can pull it up. I don't remember that off the top of my head. Doesn't matter. And then in 2011, in the second round, they drafted Colin Kaepernick. He did look like a bust. I feel like the situations are different because that was 6 years later that they drafted a quarterback in the second round. Then they still kept him on that roster and then ended up moving on from him in that 2012 season once he got hurt, and then Colin Kaepernick took over and they went on that run to the Super Bowl. I don't know if there's anyone who's going to be there in the second round that excites me a lot. Maybe Mac Jones makes it to the second round, but I don't love that idea. Kyle Trask, he's a statue in the pocket, man. I don't think that's the way to go either. There's not really someone there who'd be like, oh, that's an intriguing, depth place. And that would be, let's play the game for a second. If they drafted a quarterback in the second round and kept Sam Darnold also, because I think that's kind of what we were hinting at here too a little bit. That would be Darnold in the first round of 2018, Morgan in the fourth round of 2020, and quarterback X in the second round of 2021. That's a lot of picks at the quarterback position over a 4-year window. So I personally wouldn't like to go that direction. I think if you're keeping Sam, great. Keep Sam, move back, get more assets, build out this roster. If you want to take a quarterback, also great. Trade Sam, get a second, take your guy at 2, and go from there. Because there are really good draft prospects at the top of this draft. Like, there's a high-end quarterback class. And to pass up on one of the high-end guys when you're sitting there at 2 and taking one at 34 who's, 3, 4, 5 steps below, I don't know if I can get behind doing that. I think the situations were a little bit different in San Francisco with Smith being there for 5 or 6 years before they took another quarterback in with a premium pick. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below, or if you're listening in just podcast form, make sure to give a subscribe, a rating, and review. That really helps us out a lot. I appreciate all the love and support from each and every one of you guys. It's getting a little quiet at this time of year. Like, I don't know, I was kind of drained out talking about Deshaun Watson every week for a while. Don't want to continue to run that back every single episode. Want to change it up a little bit. I really hope you guys got a chance to see the interview that I did with Jay Drew, who covers BYU football this past week. If you haven't seen that, I would recommend checking it out. Deep dive on Zach Wilson. This week, I'm going to try to talk to someone who covers Ohio State and talk Justin Fields, and we'll go from there. So just keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much again for tuning in. I'm Matt O'Leary. Subscribe if you are new, and I'll talk to you next time.